In the middle of March, when it became pretty clear that Donald Trump had this nomination, there was a controversy brewing over his campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, and who had shoved a reporter, grabbed a reporter. So at that point, the paper wanted me to do a profile of Corey. So they surprised me by telling me, come on down to Mar-a-Lago, where the whole campaign was for the Easter week. And I really got a glimpse of what exactly the Trump campaign machinery looked like at that point. And it was three people. It was a campaign manager, a spokeswoman, Hope Hicks, and Donald Trump. And he was sort of hanging around for my whole 2.5-hour interview with his Make America Great Again hat on. And he was just getting a constant stream of pieces of paper with printouts of everything that was being said about him at that moment anywhere on the internet or whatever. And Corey told me at that point that their entire campaign staff at headquarters consisted of 15 people. This was a man about to get the Republican nomination, and he basically had a central staff of 15 people. Hillary Clinton had 600 just across the river in Brooklyn. And so I think that was, however they built up afterwards, the lesson I took away from that was that this really was a campaign that was built on one person, his personality, his vision, and his decision that there was a different way of winning this thing that had ever been done before.
So they really broke all the rules of a national political campaign. The size of their staff, the way they used polling, the way they dealt with the news media, the way they even sort of chose where and how they were going to do campaign events.
Right, in places that made no sense at all. Why are you going to Alabama in the middle of the New Hampshire primary? Their belief, and I think that I was skeptical about until, probably 9:30 on election night, that these mega rallies were really the kind of organizing tool that they said they were. And again, that a candidate who could say the things he did, react to things the way he did, wasn't going to do something along the way that was going to prove fatal. The single most important interview I did, and in some ways the story that explained it to me more than any other, was I discovered that the sister of Dennis Kucinich and her husband were Trump supporters. This is a woman who had never voted for a Republican in her life. You walked into her house, and there was a picture of herself on the mantle with Barack Obama. There was a picture of herself in her hallway with Sean Penn. She was, she had worked in her liberal brother's campaigns since she was a teenager, and yet she and her husband, for the first time in their lives, were supporting a Republican. And as I talked to them, it wasn't that they didn't think the things that he said were offensive, but they sort of heard them in a different way. They said, I know what he's trying to say. And they looked around their community. They lived in Parma, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland. 1956 was the fastest growing community in America. And when he would talk about jobs going overseas and people being left behind, they saw this in their lives. And when he picked a fight with the Pope, Terry Sikorsky, crucifix around her neck, would say, he didn't mean that. So I think that Trump supporters heard things in a new way and a different way that that was one of the things that we, I think, failed to grasp until pretty late in the game. I was really struck by, at the Democratic convention, how they would have, there were, some amazing moments. The Khan family, which they hadn't really sort of choreographed, that sort of happened organically. But in terms of what they planned, it was to have speaker after speaker after speaker get up there and talk about the Hillary I know, when in fact, the American public already knows her. They've known her for 25 years. They've seen her in all sorts of roles. So this idea that you were going to change what people had already decided about her character, about her record, about what she stood for and didn't stand for, was never going to happen. And then beyond that, they put a lot of faith in their own machinery, that they could take the smartest minds from the Barack Obama campaigns, that they could use all the technical gee whiz data stuff and sort of mechanically produce a victory. And the fact is that in a lot of places it worked. In Nevada, it was a great success. In Florida, they actually got the numbers, and better than the numbers they were expecting. What they could not manufacture out of their machine was enthusiasm. So in Florida, even though she performed just as well as she thought she would, they were swamped by this huge surge of turnout of Trump supporters. And this is an election that had the lowest overall turnout in 20 years, 55%. But the Trump supporters, where he needed them, came out in force.